Well, wonderful. Today, joining us, we are going to meet Claire Watson Bartholomei. Bartholomei?
Bartolomei.
Bartolomei. I love that. So, always pronouncing correctly is a good thing. So, Claire, we welcome you and we thank you for giving us some time out of your busy schedule today to learn a little bit about you and your business and hear about your journey as a business owner and what you've learned and what you can share with the world out there. So, again, thank you. And let's begin by just asking you, what would be important for us to know about you and your business, maybe how you got started, how long you've been in business?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. I I started my business. So my first business was is Lola's Cafe. We launched that restaurant, me and my partners, 4 years ago. We just celebrated our fourth anniversary. So this is a brick and mortar restaurant that we created in the Dundee neighborhood in Omaha, Nebraska. So it's a neighborhood that is near and dear to our hearts. It's sort of right in the heart of Midtown Omaha, where I grew up. And we started this business, my partner Karina and my husband Stephen and our partner Phil, in 2019, 5 months before the world shut down because of a global pandemic. Um, and the reason why we started Lola's was because we saw a need in the Omaha community for a type of restaurant that Lola's would become. So my husband and I had just returned from New York City where we lived for close to 10 years. We were back in our hometown of Omaha. Both of us were doing freelance work that we were bringing from New York. We would sort of travel around to different coffee shops in the Omaha area. And, you'd get situated, you'd get started on your work, you'd had your morning coffee, and not long wouldn't be long before you were hungry for lunch then. And um, there weren't any places that married both great coffee and good food. I mean, muffins are great, but you can only eat so many muffins. Um, and so we began to wish that a place like this existed. We were also missing the cafes of New York that are open all the time. Whatever time of day you walk in, you are sure to find great food, high quality wine, good coffee. Um, a lot of these cafes in New York had more of a European influence just because of the nature of that city. So many Europeans who live there and start their businesses there. Um, and so we were also looking for a place like that in Omaha, a cafe that you could walk into at lunch or dinner and be sure to find an excellent meal. Um, and so Lola's um, fits the bill for these two needs because we couldn't find anything else. My partner Karina was a caterer. She had a boutique catering company at the time. And I was sort of working with her on some business strategy and branding strategy for that company. Um, and we'd been talking about maybe she was going to get a commercial space, production kitchen, that sort of thing. But we said the one thing we know is that we'll never own a restaurant. And then probably about, I don't know, 45 days after we said that out loud, we were putting a concept together, a proposal for um, this restaurant. So that's how I got involved in owning my own business. I had never owned a business before that. I'd never owned a restaurant. I'd worked in plenty. Um, the thing I like about restaurants is the human connection and simplicity of product, that this is what we're making and this is what we're selling to you. I don't have to um, there's no there's nothing intangible about that. It's you get food, we make food, you buy food, and it allows you to have this connection with your neighborhood, with your community. It is it's more than a business relationship, of course. It's, they come to you every morning for their breakfast, their coffee, they're in there every day for their lunch. And so it means something in their life to have this place to go, and to have people say that, oh, we're so glad you're here. There was nothing like this before, means a lot, because it means that we are accomplishing what we set out to do, which was create a restaurant that we didn't have before in Omaha. So that's great. So, absolutely the best part about um, owning this business is the people that I get to see. It allows me to meet new people, reconnect with people from, earlier in my life that I might not have ever crossed paths with again. I see them on a regular basis when they come through the restaurant. So that's very special. And then creating a place for people to feel like they belong, is also hugely rewarding. So whether that is, our staff that is part of our team, they feel like they're part of something, or the people who come and see us every day because they like to eat the food and like the space that we create. So that's
Beautiful.
definitely the best part.
Beautiful. Love that. Well, first of all, welcome home.
Thanks.
Good to have you home, and happy anniversary as you think about 4 years ago, and then pushing through, not only surviving but thriving during that time that we all were trying to figure out. And totally agree with your thoughts about, we as humans are created to be together, be in community.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you are creating a place for people to gather and do life together and belong and be in community. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Love that. Well, a couple questions for you as you think about, what was your biggest learning as you returned here to the Omaha market and starting this concept? What's been your biggest learning along that journey?
Um, to be honest, I feel like I've had nothing but learning in the whole process. Like I said, this was my first business, so it was, my first step into all of the aspects of owning a business that is a restaurant. So restaurants are complicated beasts. Um, and so, yeah, I was learning everything from, the way that we put together operating budgets, to how we run payroll, to how you how you plan to feed an unknown number of people as a brand new restaurant, so with no information to go off of. So, um, I think that the biggest finding, as I get to look like retrospectively now, is that having information about previous business cycles is absolutely so valuable. So having some data to go off of, how many people come through your restaurant in a day, how many, you know, egg sandwiches you sell on a Tuesday. Once you have that information, you are so much more powerful. Otherwise, in the beginning, you just have to guess. You just have to guess, and then you have to be ready to pivot fast when your guess was wrong. But I say that pivot fast, but also like not too fast, because a new restaurant does take time to sort of show you what it's going to become and what your traffic is going to look like.
Mhm.
Um, we our restaurant is unique to the Omaha market because it is so many concepts in one. That it is a coffee shop, it is a daytime restaurant, and then it's a full service restaurant, wine bar, full bar in the evening. So we are open every day from 8 until 9 p.m. So that is 11 service hours a day, 7 days a week. And the amount of work that goes into preparing for those services in the kitchen is not nothing. I partnered with Karina Figueroa. She is my partner in business, and she was head of our kitchen. She also had never run a restaurant before. And so, we set out in earnest to run the restaurant the way that we felt like a restaurant would be run, which is we made absolutely everything from scratch. We sourced the highest quality products we could afford because those were the things that we wanted to eat. Um, we try to use organic products whenever possible, local whenever possible, because that's how we run our kitchens at home. And so we felt like, well, that just has to translate to a restaurant and scale up the more we need. But so we had these three different services, and any one of them is a business in and of itself. Um, Here in Omaha, there's coffee shops, there's lunch places, and there's dinner places. Nobody does it, hardly anybody does all in one like that. And so, a big realization that is only occurring to us now is that we have a monster of a restaurant. Where we kind of went into it thinking it was a simple concept, and it wasn't as simple as we thought. But I think I digress a little bit. um, Talking about the learnings. Oh, I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. You learned that you created something from simple to now this complex with 11 service hours a day, 7 days a week.
And we started that way. So out of the gates, we actually had longer hours than it was actually, I think closer to 13 hours a day.
Wow.
When we first opened. But so yeah, we started out the gates. And so maybe in hindsight, maybe easing into all of those services would have been the way to go. We were open for 5 months before the pandemic shut us down. And in those 5 months, we saw a good amount of growth, and got to a spot that I would say was kind of the perfect spot to enter the pandemic in. We had enough of a following, we had enough of a base of people who wanted us to survive, that when we pivoted to sort of that large format, more catering style that we were doing, we were creating like, grocery boxes and dropping them off at people's houses, and that people cared about what we were doing and ordered it so that we would be supported and stay in business. But we were young enough to where we were only doing this for 5 months, so we could do something totally different with a little bit more ease and comfort, as much as could be allowed in that time, than sort of a restaurant that had been, steadfast for the last 15 years and set in certain ways. And people, recognize some restaurants as, oh, that's where I go to eat my anniversary dinners. And maybe you don't think about, oh, maybe I'll order for that from them every day. But we were able to sort of, pivot and get in people's heads, with what we were providing at that time, in a way that allowed us to make it through that horrible year and a half. And then when we reopened the doors, we just grew so steadily. Like, I mean, I would say it was fast. We went from sort of 0 to 100 in a full year. And then year after year, we have been lucky to see more growth. But that's, relatively fast. So in 3 years, we grew from nothing to a beast of a restaurant, with a lot of employees. So I think we have close to 50 people on our payroll, and yeah, have seen revenue growth that is substantial. And we did it in a way that we didn't have systems and processes in place as we were getting that big. We were just getting big and had to respond to it, with, in the worst of times, like throwing people into situations because we needed people, we needed hands, to be places, because we were getting busier and we needed them. And I think that I am working towards now putting those systems in place so that we have a sustainable structure, so that, you know, when we lose a manager, for instance, we are not back at square one because we've been operating that way for too long. So we need some consistency in structure to help, you know, help us move from um, season to season or year to year in a more comfortable way. And also, I would say that one of the more surprising things, and not surprising, I how important it is to set your staff up for success. Um, I mean, it is the most important thing. It is the difference between success and failure. I would say that um, when a team member or a staff member is not doesn't know what to do in their position, they feel bad in their position. They don't just perform badly, they feel bad. And there's a lot of emotional distress that comes into their work environment because of that. And from experience, we have seen, you know, higher turnover when people aren't set up to be successful in their position. Um, compared to when we have put these things in place, when we do communicate, when we do put in the time and training into somebody, they're going to stay a lot longer than if we just say, okay, you're the bartender,
There you
figure
go.
it out.
You know, we share that with you. We simplify it to the point that it's about people and process. And you've got good people wanting to do good things. It's usually when something doesn't go as expected, it's usually an underlying process that's either missing or it's fractured or it's outdated or it needs some attention. And you're absolutely right. That's setting your team up for success. Absolutely. Absolutely. You mentioned this whole idea of constant learning and of course, lifelong learning is a discovery process, just as you described along the way the last 4 years. I'm curious, what would you say if you were to start all over again, besides maybe easing into it? What other insights have you learned, or what might you do differently that you would share with anybody listening or watching today?
I would say that building that structure, putting in those systems and processes from day one, um, would be the biggest change. So kind of not knowing what I didn't know in the beginning, and then learning or realizing what we need sort of in the middle um, of the speeding train. You know, we're on the train right now, and so it's not stopping. So we now have to create all of these things while we're going. Um, and you know, that's a little bit uncomfortable for staff. It's not like we can make it more comfortable through communication, but I would say that it's uncomfortable for me to
I'm
have to create these things as we are already moving.
right.
Having the
Some
bandwidth to do that, sort of like
sure,
medium to long term thinking when I am so in the moment, in the weeds with
right.
everything else that happens at the restaurant. So I would say that would be the biggest thing, to create sort of like that system and then bring people into it and adjust it from there. Like adjustments easy, creating something that people have to be a part of is, I think, what's hard.
And that is the creative spirit though of people that see the art and science of running a business, right? It's the reward of it when you get to create together and discover together what works and what doesn't work. We use an acronym for systems, and it stands for saving yourself time, energy, and money. And really that's what systems do, because all of those are valuable for sure. Um, Curious about, you mentioned team, and you've got a nice number here to work with. What qualities do you look for when you're adding people to your team? What's that common denominator of creating the culture that you want for your restaurant?
Um, I would say that the most successful team members that we have added possess sort of a self-responsibility that is very apparent even in their interview. So in restaurants, um, at least in the front of house, people are off. They're almost um, like self contractors. They move into a restaurant and if they're a server, they're waiting tables and sort of that's their program that they run. They they're responsible for their guests. They're responsible for their income because of the service that they provide their guests. So, and bartenders are the same way. Um, they sort of see that ecosystem of the restaurant of their relationship to their guests equals their sort of economy. And we run a very different like economy in our restaurant. So we do like a full house pool, and so everybody is part of this larger system of pooled tips, and so that sort of one-to-one relationship with the guests is a little bit different. But people who are experienced in the restaurant industry possess this quality of when they're good of they understand themselves as the owner of their business, which is they bring themselves to work, they are putting forth a certain professionalism, a certain responsibility. They care about the details, anywhere from how their uniform looks to how their tables are, how clean their tables are, where things are placed on the tables, knowing their regulars' names, things like that. So I can usually tell from people in an interview if they sort of possess this quality, which I know they're going to be very successful in restaurants if they do, because they care a lot, and they manage themselves well, which means they're going to manage the experience for the guests well. Yes, they're going to become part of our system at Lola's, where there are certain ways we do things, which is fine. They still bring that spirit into it, where they own that process. And so that I would say is like the big marker. If people have that, they're going to be very successful, and they're going to yeah, be able to take on responsibility with grace, and they're going to be able to provide great customer service while juggling other priorities.
Beautiful, beautiful. The experience is the marketing, right? That's what you're after
Right.
here. That's for
Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
absolutely. Somebody has a great experience at your restaurant, they tell other people about it, and it sticks in their head. So, that's everything.
It is everything. I'm curious about, since you mentioned it, this idea of the personal life and the work life demands. How do you address those for yourself, your partners, and then the employee, the team? How do you manage that or support them in that spirit?
Um, so I think we recognize that working in restaurants can take a lot of you. Um, and there is a real kind of burnout culture that we are aware of and we want to steer clear of, especially when you're talking about your management who do put in a lot of hours. So hourly employees in a restaurant, they can sort of choose their own adventure. They can work a couple days a week or they can work 5 days a week. I usually only hire and guarantee 4 days a week of shifts to front of house employees, just because in experience, um, putting them on a regular basis for any more than that, they will not last. And so putting them on for 4, they can have the flexibility then to pick up shifts. And that's always kind of a fun game. Who wants to give up their shift, or can I work for you? And or in on a limited basis, if they need to have extra hours for a couple of weeks because they're saving up for a trip, then I try to accommodate that and let them work extra. But I don't build my schedules with people working hourly the max that they can work. Um, and then in our management and back of house, we almost always try to give people 2 days off in a row so that they do have that kind of weekend, even if it falls in the middle of the week, that they do have that like solid block of kind of rest and reset time. And so that has been a priority for us, um, for the work life balance. Um, and for myself, I try to put sort of real structure around my work time so that is there are moments of the day where I can't work, um, that I need to turn off my phone or that I need to take a break. I have 2 children, so that is real easy. There's like a whole other team demanding my time. So I think that while that's chaotic, at times, I do think it helps me set these boundaries and be really strict about the boundaries because um, otherwise I feel like I was letting my kids down. So,
Right. Children keep us grounded in what's important.
yeah.
And I do believe that some of the best business owners that I have met, although it is, as you say, chaotic and complex, it really is one of the best models because they already have some structure and boundaries around that. And there's just some things you're not going to cross, right? There's just some boundaries that you're not going to cross. So I love that. I love that. What have been some of the maybe misconceptions about being a business owner that you bumped into and that you would maybe even misconceptions for your team and your staff members?
Um, I think that probably the biggest misconception is that business owners, especially early in business, make a lot of profit or any profit for that matter. Um, yeah, I think that your team sees you as the owner, as the boss, uh, which means that you know, you have all of that they see, and so that's a lot. But misconception of just how much goes into a business, and how much goes back into a business immediately. Um, I think would probably be the biggest misconception. And also that, in speaking in restaurants specifically, that how thin the margins are.
Right. Yeah, and working with that, right? Working with that particular industry for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. If you were to say, if you were to talk to your younger self and you get to decide, what that is, what advice would you give your younger self?
Um, I would have taken a few more business classes in college. um, or like, yeah, or management classes. I think so. I have a number of degrees. None of them really set me up to run a business or manage a restaurant. Um, yeah, so I have an environmental studies degree. I have an international policy degree. Um, yeah, international development masters. So
Well, what
uh,
you've proven though, Claire, is that you can learn.
yeah, I think I
Absolutely.
would say that like if there's one thing that's true, it is I love being a lifelong learner because every time I finish a chapter, I move to a new book.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm curious that are you a book reader?
Um, I was before I had
Oh,
kids.
yeah.
Mhm.
No, that's a different season in life. No
Yeah,
doubt.
yeah,
So sure. I love that. That's actually where we meet a lot of business owners is that very same place is I don't know what I need to know. And if you
right.
could have accelerated that learning process almost with templates and the steps of here's what you need to focus, you build the systems, right? Take everything that's up here and with your team and put it in systems and process so you could train and delegate and then improve those. Is that something you think that would have been helpful to you in the early years?
Yeah, I think, yes, I think that, yeah, that would have been beneficial. Um, I did a lot of work like this for, like putting in systems and creating programs in some of my master's work and following grad school. Um, Different context, but sort of the
Sure,
same,
sure.
same
Same,
type of,
same
yeah,
idea. You've got to have
yeah,
the structure to support something and sustain
yeah,
it, then grow it for sure. Yeah. We also know that there's a value though in what you've learned over the last 4 years, because it's kind of like in the Midwest here, of course, this time of year when the butterflies, the monarchs and everything are showing up. When you think about like a caterpillar and then it moves into this cocoon space, and as it emerges to become that butterfly, if we were to help it out of its cocoon and kind of break it open, it may not be able to fly because the blood supply doesn't go to the wings to make the wings strong so that it can fly. It's that struggle of breaking out of that cocoon that makes it stronger. And when I meet people like you and hear the stories of the beautiful space that you're actually in and all that has come from the time of what you learned to pivot during COVID to where you are today, that's part of it as well. And that's where that deep learning, that experiential learning really takes place. It's not something that you necessarily sit in a classroom and learn an
right,
academic exercise, right? There's not a curriculum necessarily for it.
right.
Yeah, beautiful,
Yeah,
beautiful.
that's a good point.
What would be something you would want us to know that maybe haven't asked you?
No, I think we've covered a lot of stuff.
How do you reward and recognize and celebrate? What do you do for yourself and for the team?
Um, we try to take the team out, create different occasions for us to spend time together outside of work. Um, yeah, me and my partners just had lunch the other day to celebrate our 4-year anniversary. So just trying to take time that, um, yeah, to celebrate those markers.
Beautiful. And stay connected.
Yeah.
Where are you growing? What do you want to grow into? What's out on the horizon for the next
So we opened up a second cafe in April this past year. It is a different concept, but related in sort of our core values of what we're offering. It has similarities to Lola. So Lola's is located in Film Streams Dundee Theater. So Film Streams is a art house nonprofit. And our new restaurant called Fig is located in the new Science and Discovery Museum in Omaha. So similarities there also, that we are partnered with a cultural nonprofit and share space with a cultural nonprofit. So kind of an interesting model in both places. Very different partnerships, very different neighborhoods, but yeah. So that's been interesting. I would say that opening a second concept, we have been able to apply some of the learnings from the first restaurant to the new restaurant. We also do a lot of catering and events at this new location. We've always done some catering for Lola's, but I would say that the growth piece between the two businesses would probably be in events and catering.
Beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful. Love that. Our heart shares that space with you for the nonprofits. I call them impact agencies, and that we always do coaching for a cause as well. And there'll be at least once a year where we have an event and we have business owners invite their favorite impact agencies or nonprofit agencies, and then we give away some strategic planning with them or for them, or some team building or whatever they might need, because it is about giving back and being positioned to give back to the community for sure. Yeah, love that. Love that. Well, Clare, this has been wonderful. Thank you for your investment of time and to share a bit of your story, and to not only survive during that time. It sounds like you're thriving and growing and applying learnings and lessons and creating jobs, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And doing it in a way where people are seeing that there's more to life, as you do life together, that's a currency in and of itself. People are looking for that today for sure, in their work environment, in their personal lives, no doubt.
Yeah. Great. Well, thanks for having me. It was great talking with you.
Lovely. And I definitely am going to check out both places, so you will see me there,
Okay.
experiencing both Lola's and Figs. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Have a great day.
I know.